A very good evening to you and a warm welcome to our program Spotlight. And on Spotlight, we usually discuss about current affairs and also the decisions taken by the higher authorities with regards to the topics discussed. So currently the ongoing topic is the budget. So today we will be touching on the reliefs and special focal points of this budget, and to do the honors we have with us Professor Randit Bandara, who is a parliamentarian and also a senior professor of economics at the Colombo University. A very good evening to you, Professor, and we are honored to have you here with us this evening.
Very good evening to you.
And today's topic would be the budget, as I mentioned in introductions. Can you please elaborate on how this year's budget has been prepared amidst the current global pandemic situation?
You see, you are quite right. This year budget has been prepared as we do traditionally by inviting people to present their proposals, by inviting various other organizations, chambers, ministries and independent pressure groups. I think altogether 132 different parties were invited and to present their opinion. So taking inputs from those is the part of the job. And as you said, we are not operating under a normal. We are working on a new normal as because of the COVID as all recognized as a global pandemic. We are having quite a large number of consequences as a result. Therefore, it was very challenging. I would say the Honorable Minister of Finance recognized 12 different challenges that are mostly local, and also he recognized 5 international challenges, and also he recognized the certain issues that we inherited as the government from the previous government. Now, if you take for example, the many people talked about the loan to be repaid, which is massive, and also if you look at the macroeconomic fundamentals, what we inherited was very big. If you take economic growth, for example, that was the lowest recorded in the recent past, and unemployment was very high, and that was around 500,000 people were unemployed, including 68,000 graduates from local and international universities.
And the pandemic has made it worse.
And also, trust me, we have to pay the salaries and pensions for 2.1 million every month, and we are supporting 1.8 million families, those who receive some of the benefits. And also there are quite a large number of recurrent expenditure which we can't cut down. Truly people need so much of support as because our disparity or the distribution of income and wealth is not so satisfactory. Therefore, if I summarize the answer in nutshell, yes, it was very challenging, and I know for sure the Minister of Finance always believe, don't fear to think differently. So he has proven in his maiden budget, and if you read, you would see it is a very comprehensive policy document which has given strategic direction for years to come.
And also, Professor, since we are on the topic of the budget, so in a layman's point of view, let's talk about what exactly is the budget and what do people actually expect?
You see, the budget in theory, it's quite simple and straightforward, that every year any government across the world prepared a comprehensive document, what would be the expenditure, what would be the source of income, and if there is a deficit, how it could be refinanced. That is all about budget. But unfortunately, it has been the case. I can remember last 30-40 years, the people's expectations are very simple and straightforward. What they would expect, what I got on my plate. Now,
Exactly.
You may have noticed the many television channels carries along with the news asking a person who is on the street, what is your expectation of the budget? So, what is his expectation? He is not ready to analyze what the budget proposals are. His expectation is to have a cheaper rice, cheaper consumable items.
Comfortable life.
And budget is not about that. What I got on my plate is the budget. Anybody could prepare a budget. The budget has its own set of objectives. Unfortunately, the budget of any government being politicized and not being analyzed in line with a proper objective of the budget. Let me give you a brief summary of a budget objective. One is the reallocation of resources. As I told you, resources not being allocated in such a way to ensure the fair go and sustainability. And certain sectors are being given overdue attention, whereas the certain sectors are not being given attention at all. Now, if you take for example, the pharmaceutical. Now, that was the practice throughout the history of our country, that we are relying on imported pharmaceuticals. So, why can't we give a due attention to that particular sector, where we will be able to manufacture pharmaceutical, may not be able to achieve sustainability or a self-sufficiency within a year, but it should be a long-term objective. So, the budget could facilitate, provide certain incentives.
So, budget focuses on the long term.
Exactly. And the number two is reducing inequality and inequality in distribution of income and wealth. Now, I told you 23% of our populations are depends on some form of a government support. And we have been creating, whether we like or not, this dependency syndrome. Right? We are pleased to have anything free.
Who doesn't want to have anything?
No, I mean, now, if you go to any developed country, the most popular saying is that there is no free lunches. You have to work for it. And people are more entrepreneurial, and people do work, people do engage in more than one source of income generation. And even a public servant could work part time. And whereas us, we don't believe in multiple source of income. We are trying to cut down the cost. We are overstretched. That is why we look depressed, right? That is why we are not happy. Ask anyone who is living in abroad, when you convert dollar into rupees and any other foreign currency into rupees, you get so much of rupees. But ask them how they earn an extra dollar. Right now, if you take my son who is studying in UK, he work 20 hours, that is legal, and also he works, we call jobs for cash in hand. They are altogether 3 because it's tough.
Exactly.
I can't afford the entire educational expenses of my own kids. And now they have realized that is not just experience, that is it should be. Now, if you take any of our undergraduates here in Sri Lanka, I have been teaching in the university for last 8 years, right? How many of us ready to work part time? Instead, what we do? We protest and we ask more, right? And number 3, economic stability. Now, are we stable? The budget should be focused on having a stable economy in Sri Lanka. Now, I am talking about generation to come, right? And the number 4, management of public enterprises. Now, there are 300 public enterprises in Sri Lanka. Government have invested over 700 billions to establish those public enterprises and still spending over 75 billion every year to run them. Now, if you take Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation, if you take Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation, name a few, and there are quite a large number of public entities. The public have invested, and then public also giving the salaries and various other perks those who are working on those organizations. Is it fair? I mean, if you take Rupavahini Corporation, there are about 1,000 odd people working in it, and I haven't seen this much of facility anywhere else. Why can't make their own living? Therefore, in Sri Lanka, managing public enterprises is very challenging.
So, we touched on the main objectives of the budget. So, let's also touch on the main focal points of the budget this time, Professor.
Now, you see, if you look at the budget speech by the Honorable the Minister of Finance, he summarized his main argument presented in the budget, where he focused on 5 main balance sheets requiring to open up our country locally and internationally in a manner that strengthen the national production economy. You see, we were relying on all along either trade or a service sector. Now, with the pandemic, you may have witnessed that no tourists are coming, and even the simple barber can't open his saloon, right? The guy who is running a driving school can't provide his service. Therefore, too much relying on services is dangerous. That is what we have recognized. And also, you can't be a simple trading hub. Now, what we do, what we have been doing, we import whatever possible. Now, the locally certain commodities that are importing easily could be produced. Now, we have a very tight external balance financing our imports. Therefore, no longer you can't import all what you want, all what you could sell. Therefore, relying on that kind of economy, we recognize is dangerous. That is why the Honorable Finance Minister looked at it as a long-term objective to be achieved at least by 2027, where he highlighted 5 different balance sheets. Number 1, human resource development that targets people of our country. Now, you see, in most of the cases, the right man is not on the right seat, and also so much of unemployment, not that there is no opportunity, people are not willing, right. And we have a syndrome, we must get into the white collar, not the blue collar, right. There are opportunities which are very well paid. Rather than running a trishow, if you become a plumber, people don't have that kind of a thinking. Therefore, the human resources development should be focused on the demand driven, right. Now, why we have to provide employment for graduates every year, every government? Because the graduates that we produce in conventional academia is not fit into the available opportunities in the employment market. And the number 2, environmental conservation enriched by the biodiversity. Now, I belongs to a different generation. What I have experienced, unfortunately, you are not experiencing. Neither my sons, right. Therefore, we need to have a balance, and we firmly believe that the integration between the development and the environment is possible, and achieving sustainable development is possible. And the number 3, a balanced performance includes international trade and financial activities. Now, you see, we just imports and we export which are not really demand driven. We have all along recognized ourselves as price takers, we are not price makers, right. So, we have to think of a new source of foreign income. We are currently relying on traditional exports, the remittance and the tourism, right. But there are so much of potential, so which is being recognized by the budget strategically. And number 4, public finance. Now, you may have seen the last year budget deficit was 11.1, this year is 8.8, and if you look at the history, we always had the deficit budgets. Now, the finance minister is aiming at a 0 deficit in year 2027.
Not immediately.
You
Which
can't,
is not possible.
right. And number 5, banks and financial activities. I can talk about hour or 2
about this.
But unfortunately, the time is limited, I know very well.
I think we have only 5 minutes.
Yeah. Therefore, we need to focus on entrepreneurship development, encouraging people to invest, encouraging people to save more money, to utilize as investment to build this nation. We need a new start.
Exactly. Speaking of entrepreneurship, we see a lot of youth investing in Sri Lanka. Given the situation, we don't see them leaving the country but remaining in the country, which is good. So we see them investing as well. So what are the incentives this budget provides them to make things convenient for them?
Now you see, there are altogether 16 different proposals. Now if I put it in this way, if you take the whole budget, 64% of the concentration is the 64% of focus is given to re-establish and to enhance the production economy, within which there are about 12 proposals being given the focus for new startup and to provide various incentives, including the premises, the electricity, water, waste disposal, and also the education, entrepreneurial education. And also the banks were requested, the financial institutions were requested to provide the low cost funding. And I don't see any budget in the recent past given that much of attention to create opportunities and to invite young people and also them to think out of the box. And opportunities are given. It is our job to make them aware, and I believe the various institutions, now we have Entrepreneurship Development Authority, we have media, we have various other public entities, and also a responsibility of the banks and the financial institution to make this message across the board and encouraging young people to come.
I think we are already doing that right now.
Indeed, I am quite pleased.
So it's interesting to welcome the young entrepreneurs, because since we can't always depend on imports, as you did mention, we have to have a lot of local manufacturing happening in Sri Lanka as well. So it's actually an opportunity for all the youngsters, and I think all the undergraduates and everybody who's looking for a job, as you mentioned, that they need to earn their living. And hard work is important. So last but not the least, I think we're in the final 1 minute of the program. So what does the future look like for tourism?
You see, the whole what we do, the managing this pandemic and developing infrastructure and making all cities are cleaner is for what?
To welcome
attract tourists.
Mm-hmm.
And trust me, the tourism has been one of the leading sector that can be developed in such a way. We started with 400,000. When His Excellency Mahinda Rajapaksa gave the previous government to run the show, we were being able to have 2.4 million tourists. So we easily can go up to 5 million. It's not a difficult task at all, because Sri Lanka now recognized as the vaccinized nation in Asia. People don't have to fear to come to Sri Lanka.
With that, I think we have to wind up the program as well. Thank you so much for being a part of the program and giving us an insight as to what exactly is a budget and what people can expect in the coming days. Thank you so much, Professor.
You're welcome.
And on Spotlight this evening, we have Professor Ranjit Bandara, parliamentarian and former senior professor of economics at the University of Colombo. With that, we conclude our program. Thank you so much for tuning in.